The moment she said those words, the world around us seemed to freeze. The wind falling still, the afternoon sun dimming behind passing clouds, and the quiet gravel road stretching between us suddenly feeling like the edge of two separate lives. I didn't know then that her question would become the turning point of my entire year, maybe even my entire life. It wasn't the words alone that shook me. It was the look in her eyes, the mix of hesitation and trust, like she was silently asking for something more than permission. And the truth was, I had no idea how broken she was beneath the calm she tried to carry. Nor did she know how much I needed someone to believe in me again after everything I had lost. If you're watching this right now, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unexpected people who walk into our lives when we need them most. Her name was Monica, and the first time I saw her was on the dirt road that wound behind the small ranch-style retreat center in northern Colorado, where people from all over came to recover from burnout or life storms they didn't know how to face alone. I wasn't a counselor or a therapist. I was just the groundskeeper, Jonathan, 33, quiet, trying to rebuild myself after the kind of heartbreak that makes a man question everything he once believed in. I moved there after losing my younger brother in an accident, a loss that fractured my family in ways none of us were prepared for. Working the land, fixing fences, taking care of the horses, it was all I could handle, and maybe all that kept me from collapsing under the weight I carried. Monica had arrived 2 days earlier, quiet and withdrawn, keeping mostly to herself except for the morning jog she took near the trail that passed the wooden gate where I often worked. I noticed the way she hesitated before speaking, how her smile never quite reached her eyes, and how she seemed to shrink into herself when others approached. Something about her silence felt familiar, like she was also living in a place where the past still had its hands on her shoulders. The moment that started, everything happened on a warm afternoon when she jogged back from the trail, sweat on her forehead, her breathing uneven. She stopped by the gate I was repairing and asked if she could step behind it to change her shirt because she didn't want to go all the way back to the cabins. She looked embarrassed, unsure, maybe not about the question itself, but about trusting someone. When she asked, "Should I change here or look away?" I sensed it wasn't really about the shirt at all. It felt like she wanted to know whether the world still had gentleness left in it. I told her softly, "Do whatever you want." What she did next wasn't dramatic. She simply stepped behind the gate, changed into a clean shirt she had tied around her waist, and walked back into the sunlight with a small, grateful smile. But for some reason, that tiny act, her trusting me with her fear of being seen the wrong way, stayed with me long after she walked away. Over the next few days, she stopped by more often, sometimes pretending she needed directions, other times asking about the horses or the weather, as if those small conversations could stitch back parts of her that felt torn. Slowly, she began sharing pieces of her story. She told me she was from Ohio, had moved to Colorado for a fresh start after leaving a long, draining relationship that nearly stripped her of her confidence. Her ex had made her feel small, weak, dependent. She came to the retreat because she couldn't recognize the girl she used to be anymore. Listening to her felt like looking into a mirror of my own hurt. I told her about my brother, how losing him shattered the sense of purpose I once had, how I pushed everyone away because grief made the world feel too loud. She listened quietly, letting my words settle in the warm air between us. For the first time in months, I felt like someone actually saw me. And maybe for the first time in years, she felt safe enough to be seen. Days turned into weeks, and our routines began intertwining in ways neither of us planned. She'd jog in the mornings, and I'd find excuses to be fixing a fence near the trail or brushing down the horses when she walked by. She'd help me water the garden even though she joked that every plant she touched died. She laughed easily around me, her shoulders loosening, her eyes brighter. I began to understand that healing doesn't always come in big, dramatic moments. Sometimes it arrives in soft glances, shared silence, and someone remembering your story without judgment. One late afternoon, after a long day clearing fallen branches from a storm, I found her sitting alone near the wooden barn, hugging her knees to her chest. Her breathing was shaky, her eyes red. She told me she had just received a message from her ex, something that pulled her right back into that old fear, telling her she'd never make it on her own, that she'd always end up depending on someone. I sat beside her, not touching her, not speaking at first, simply letting her know she wasn't alone. She whispered that she didn't want to be a burden. I told her she wasn't. I told her she was stronger than she realized, that healing didn't make her weak and trusting someone again wasn't a failure. I said it gently but firmly, hoping she felt even a fraction of the truth in those words. As the weeks passed, she changed, not behind a gate this time, but as a human being rediscovering herself. She stood taller. She smiled without flinching. She started helping other retreat guests, guiding them through morning stretches, sharing her story when someone needed encouragement. Her transformation wasn't overnight, but it was real, steady, and brave. And somewhere in that time, without either of us saying it out loud, something warm and hopeful grew between us. Not a romance rushing forward, but a quiet admiration. A bond forged through vulnerability. The biggest moment came on her last evening at the retreat. The sun was sinking behind the pines, painting the sky in soft orange layers. She walked over to the same wooden gate where we first spoke. She looked at me, her eyes clear but emotional, and said she was scared to leave because this place, because I, had become part of her healing. She worried that outside this sanctuary she'd fall apart again. I told her healing isn't a place. It's a choice she'd already made. I reminded her of every moment she had risen, every step she took toward rebuilding her confidence. I told her she wasn't leaving weaker. She was leaving transformed. She hugged me then, quietly and tightly, like she was thanking me for believing in her when she had forgotten how. I held her gently, feeling something inside me settle for the first time in years. And in that fading evening light, we didn't promise anything unrealistic. We simply promised to keep choosing growth, hope, and the possibility of better days. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It truly helps more people hear stories that remind them they're not alone. Before I end this, here's a special request. Comment below what part of the story spoke to you the most. And remember, sometimes the smallest moment of trust becomes the start of a new chapter.